The morning my daughter-in-law threw away my breakfast, the sky outside the kitchen window was the pale gray of early winter. I had been awake since 5. Old habits don't leave easily. For 38 years I woke before sunrise to pack lunches, iron uniforms, and make sure my husband, Harold, had his coffee just the way he liked it: 2 sugars, a splash of milk, stirred exactly 7 times. After he passed, I kept waking early anyway. The house was quieter, but my body still believed it was needed. Now I lived with my son, Daniel, and his wife, Karina, in the home Harold and I had paid off decades ago. When Daniel suggested moving in to help out, I thought it was kindness. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom," he'd said. "We'll take care of everything." I signed the paperwork that added his name to the deed. At first, it felt like a blessing: laughter in the halls again, the sound of footsteps upstairs, life returning to rooms that had grown too still. But over time, the laughter changed. It became whispers. Doors closed a little too quickly when I approached. That morning, I made breakfast the way I always did. Scrambled eggs with chives from the small garden I still tended, 2 slices of toast, and fresh fruit arranged carefully on a plate. I added a little parsley on top just because I liked how it looked. Karina walked in as I was setting the table. She wore a silk robe, her hair pulled into a tight bun. She glanced at the plate and sighed loudly. "I already told you," she said, opening the fridge. "We're trying to eat clean. All this butter and bread, it's not healthy." "It's whole grain," I said softly, "and I used olive oil." She turned her eyes sharp. "For you, maybe, but what use are you, old woman, if you can't even listen?" The words didn't land all at once. They sank slowly like stones through water. Daniel was upstairs, getting ready for work. He didn't hear. Karina picked up the plate I'd made for myself, the smaller one, and scraped it into the trash. The eggs slid down the side of the bin. The toast landed with a dull thud. My hands trembled, but I kept them clasped. "You just waste food," she muttered, "and electricity and space." She poured herself a green smoothie and walked out, leaving the kitchen smelling faintly of spinach and something sour. I stood there for a long time, staring at the trash can. It wasn't about the eggs. It was the way she'd said it: "What use are you?" I had once balanced checkbooks to the penny. I had worked double shifts as a seamstress when Harold's factory closed. I had sold my wedding jewelry to keep Daniel in college. I had been many things: wife, mother, provider, problem solver. Now I was an inconvenience. I quietly made myself a cup of tea instead. Around 9, Daniel came downstairs, kissing Karina on the cheek before heading to the door. He smiled at me, distracted. "Morning, Mom, everything okay?" I nodded. He didn't notice the empty plate, or maybe he did and chose not to ask. When the house finally settled into silence, I took my tea to the small desk in the living room. I liked sitting near the window. The maple tree outside had lost most of its leaves, and the bare branches scratched softly against the glass when the wind picked up. That was when the phone rang. We still had a landline. I insisted on keeping it. "In case of emergencies," I said. Karina rolled her eyes every time she saw the bill. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Mrs. Thompson," a man's voice asked. "Yes." "This is Gregory Hale from Evergreen National Bank. I'm calling regarding your late husband's account." My heart skipped. Harold had handled most of the finances, though I knew enough. After he died, I closed what I thought were all the accounts. There hadn't been much left. Medical bills had seen to that. "I believe there may be a mistake," I said carefully. "There's no mistake, ma'am. We've been trying to reach you for months. The contact information we had was outdated." I gripped the receiver tighter. "What is this about?" "There is a matured investment account under your husband's name with you listed as the sole beneficiary. It was set up over 20 years ago and rolled into a fixed instrument. With accrued interest, the current balance is substantial." Substantial. My mind raced. Harold had once mentioned putting aside something extra, but we'd been so focused on surviving that I never asked more. "How substantial?" I whispered. He gave me a number. I had to sit down. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to live comfortably, enough to hire help, enough to never worry about being anyone's burden again. "I don't understand," I said faintly. "Your husband left specific instructions that the funds were not to be touched until this year. He also included a letter. You can collect both in person with proper identification. A letter. After I hung up, I sat in silence, the ticking clock suddenly too loud. Harold had always been quiet about surprises. On our 25th anniversary, he'd fixed the broken porch swing without telling me. I'd walked outside to find it swaying gently in the evening light. He had always been planning. By noon, I had dressed in my navy coat and sensible shoes. I didn't tell Karina where I was going. She barely looked up from her laptop when I passed through the kitchen. The bank building felt colder than I expected. Polished floors, glass partitions, the faint smell of paper and ink. Mr. Hale was younger than I imagined, with kind eyes behind thin-framed glasses. He guided me into a private office and slid a folder across the desk. The number was real. So was the letter. I recognized Harold's handwriting immediately, slanted, deliberate. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then it means you've reached the year I always hoped you would. I know you'll try to make do with whatever little there is and you won't ask for help. That's why I didn't tell you about this. I wanted you to have something that was only yours, not for Daniel, not for anyone else, for you. You have given your whole life to others. Let this be the chapter where you choose yourself. Oh, my love. Harold. The tears came then, quiet and unstoppable. When I left the bank, the air felt different, lighter. I didn't rush home. Instead, I visited a small apartment complex I'd noticed months ago. Modest, clean, with a garden courtyard. I'd once paused outside, imagining what it might be like to live somewhere that belonged entirely to me. By the end of the week, I had signed a lease. I hired a moving company for the following Monday, when Daniel and Karina would both be at work. That Sunday, I cooked dinner as usual: roast chicken, potatoes, green beans. Karina criticized the salt. Daniel checked his phone through most of the meal. I looked around the table and felt a strange calm. After dessert, I folded my napkin neatly and said, "I'll be moving out tomorrow." Daniel blinked. "What?" "I've found a place." Karina laughed lightly. "With what money?" I met her gaze steadily. "With mind." Silence stretched between us. Daniel frowned. "Mom, you don't have to do that. We're taking care of you." "I know," I said gently, "but I think it's time I take care of myself." Karina's expression hardened. "Is this about breakfast? You're being dramatic." "No," I replied, "it's not about breakfast. It was about use." The next day, when the movers carried out my boxes, I felt no bitterness, only relief. That afternoon, as I arranged my teacups in the small kitchen of my new apartment, my phone buzzed. "Daniel." "Mom," he said, his voice tight, "why didn't you tell me about the account?" So Karina had done her research. "I didn't know about it," I answered truthfully, "until recently. We could have planned better." "I've planned," I said softly, "for myself." There was a pause. "Are you mad at us?" I thought of the eggs in the trash, of the words that had echoed in the kitchen. "No," I said, "but I remembered something important." "What's that?" "That I still have use." That evening, I made myself scrambled eggs with chives. I set the table for one. No one threw them away.